Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, should I say, and it's a pleasure to be with you remotely. I would have loved to have been there. Unfortunately, circumstances dictate that I can't be there, but it's a pleasure to be presenting, and I hope you're having a very informative and interesting seminar and conference so far. My name is Richard Sprenger. I'm the chairman of Highfield, and Highfield is essentially a global leader in qualifications, training materials and e-learning, and we're a family business that was established in 1982. We're 2 million members use our training materials annually, and the 30,000 trainers and centres deliver Highfield qualification, and we're a regulated awarding body. Myself, I've had 50 years plus experience in food safety, both in the government, that's local government, and also supporting central government, government advisor. I developed the UK's most successful ethics courses, and I've been involved with training community directors, working with major companies on training and training programming, and I also enjoy writing as a thing. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is improving food safety, which is important. On the 7th of June has been the Food Safety Day, developed or decided by the powers that be, and so I'd like to talk about improving food safety through effective management, as I honestly believe that we have lots of different schemes and programs and systems, but very few have really focused on managers and competency. And so you can have the best systems in the world, but if you haven't got competent staff and competent managers, then unfortunately you're not going to get effective food safety. Now, the starting point for me is looking at some of the global food safety or food poisoning statistics. The World Health Organization believe that 1 in 10 people will get food poisoning annually. And the figures from around the world by countries that have reportedly got very high standards of food safety would support these figures. So the USA is saying 1 in 7, Australia 1 in 5, Canada 1 in 8, UK 1 in 66, but we do have a relatively high death rate. So you have all these statistics, but these are very, very rough statistics, and we don't have many accurate statistics. Now, if these are the statistics for some of the countries with the best food safety in the world, what it's going to be like with those countries that are not as fortunate and don't have good food safety systems, or at least as good, allegedly, as some of the others. And the other issue is, where are these food poisoning, where are all these cases coming from? Who's responsible? And you have to think, these are not just from restaurants or cafes and retail businesses and factories. They also apply to, now, very much to produce. I mean, more or less straight away from the farms. Produce is a major problem from contamination. But also, I suspect the vast majority of food poisoning actually originates in the home because of people maybe mishandling food or not having the facilities to store or the knowledge to handle it properly. So we need to think very carefully. This just isn't necessarily the food industry. It can be abused food, and obviously that needs looking at as well. But what we will focus on, and what I'm going to focus on, is the food industry and how we can, with effective management, reduce the number of food poisoning, food complaints and other things. Now, research done by a colleague of mine many years ago now, but he spent a long time looking at food poisoning cases, food poisoning outbreaks, and looking at the, if you like, what is now known as the root cause. So people are now talking about the root cause of the food poisoning. What was the real cause? And he was able to ascertain that management was one of the main root causes, and is poor management. And some of the things that he found as a problem were failure to carry out a risk assessment for when there was a menu change. Now, I realised a large proportion, in fact the majority, of the food industry represented at the seminar are from the manufacturing industry. Well, there are product changes, formulation changes. There have been some noticeable outbreaks related to manufacturing. One related to, I recall, in the United Kingdom, was a manufacturing of yogurt when somebody changed the yogurt from a fruit yogurt with a low pH to a hazelnut yogurt with a much higher pH, changed the formulation, used a sweetener instead of sugar, and didn't do a full risk assessment, and the outcome of that was a botulinum outbreak. Fortunately, not that many people were affected, but a couple of people did die. So, even in manufacture, and there's other examples that apply to manufacturing, so it's always important to do a risk assessment. Lack of contingency planning. What happens if your chiller or, in case in your refrigerators, break down? Have you got a backup? So a lot of people now into crisis management and so on, it's important. Something will go wrong at some time. Are you prepared for it? Ineffective communication to staff. This could be either from governments or enforcement officers to the food industry, and it's also from the food industry within the business itself. So are we quite clear on the messages we're sending to staff and what's expected of them? Management disincentives. The examples here are when managers are paid based on performance and profit. Now, profit can be based on increased turnover, or it can be based also on reduced costs. Unfortunately, food safety is expensive. So, whether it be training, or cleaning, or provision of soap and towels, hand washing and drying, all of these things, pest control, they all cost money. And some managers have been known to cut back on essential services that don't seem to generate immediate profit, so the costs are reduced. That means, in effect, they are given a glowing report in their performance appraisal, and that can adversely affect food safety, which doesn't manifest itself immediately. So, again, management disincentives needs to be considered very carefully if they're actually considered in performance assessment relating to increased pay or promotion. Commercially driven abuse of premises and equipment. This is perhaps in the catering industry where a restaurant may have the facilities to deal satisfactorily with 100 people. But somebody comes along and says, we've got a wedding and there's 500 people. They haven't got the facilities to deal with it, but that's commercial abuse to try and deal with that wedding for 500 if you've only got the facilities for 300. A similar situation I remember in manufacturing was some time ago at a dairy factory that I was inspecting as an enforcement officer, and they were using a system of checking milk bottles. So it was some time ago, there's not many milk bottles about now, but it's the principle of applying it to manufacturing. So they brought in the line speed and increased the line speed from, let's say, a particular time, 1,000 bottles to 3,000. Now at the time, the people who were spotting the bottles could only effectively do their job at 1,000. And once it got to 3,000, they couldn't see any of the problems, or very few. They were missing large numbers of food problems. So the manager's response to that was to take off what we call spotters completely. And as an enforcement officer, I said, no, what you've got to do is use your line speed for most of the factory, but at the spotting station, if your system can only effectively spot at 1,000 bottles per time, per X minutes or whatever, then what you've got to do is split the line into 2 or 3, and so your ratio of spotters keeps the same. And that would apply now to the actual number of a particular product that a machine can deal with, whether that be an X-ray machine or whether it be some kind of metal detection equipment or whatever. You can only run to the speed that your prevention systems can operate effectively at. Failure to recognise hazardous procedures. So if the training of the people involved is inadequate to know which are hazardous procedures, and we see the outbreaks, and retrospectively we realise that people have made a mistake. An outbreak in Scotland involving 21 people dying from E. coli was because the person who ordered the cleaning materials thought that biodegradable detergent was the same as bactericidal detergent, and so in effect, instead of killing E. coli, he was actually spreading it around the premises, and 21 people died. We need to learn from previous outbreaks. How many outbreaks are associated with chocolate, which is a low-risk food? Better to learn from other people what's going wrong that results in chocolate causing a problem, or what's the situation with peanut butter. Peanuts seem to again salmonella causing problems. Are we learning from these outbreaks, or are we repeating the same mistakes? Are we failing to keep up to date? And finally, if anything is the more complex, the more time consuming, the more people will try and take shortcuts. So you try and simplify as much as possible. Simplify equipment if possible. Simplify cleaning if possible. Simplify what the staff have to do. The simpler it is, the less likely of mistake. So those are all management failures resulting in food chain. Now, best practice for securing food safety. This is a model. I won't spend a lot of time discussing this. Some of you may have seen this model. The two things I want to focus on, in particular, apart from obviously you must be based on science and competence, with collaboration between everybody involved, so trainers and consultants, talk to the food industry, talk to enforcement inspectors, talk to the government, the universities, the school, the laboratories. Everybody needs to work together. The two things I want to focus on are licensing pre-licensing and effective management, because those are two of the things that I think are essential. The first one, licensing. How many countries have a requirement for food businesses to be licensed? And you might say, well, many countries do, and that's true. A lot don't, but some do. But how many require a trained, effective, competent manager in food safety to be employed before the business opens, and that the staff who are operating are trained and competent before the business starts producing food? And I'd be interested to hear of any countries that actually require that as a licensing prerequisite. This is a something that some of you may recognise this as being very similar to models that have been developed for food safety culture. But I'm applying this to effective management and leadership. And leadership is just as important as management. They're both very important. One is not superior to the other. They're both part of the essential armoury that we've got for making sure managers are competent and reduce the risk of food poisoning. So, we start off by managers should be leading, setting values, standards, and organising systems that will enable you to produce safe food. And then providing the resources. The resources in the way of competent, trained, effective staff, in equipment, in the type of premises, in the systems of ensuring that the food that is delivered satisfactorily and effectively. If that means refrigerated vehicles, make it more expensive, but that's what's required. You must provide the right resources. And then obviously you've got your cleaning equipment, as I've said before, you've got your pest control, you've got all of the other things that are required. And having these standards, it's very good having these standards and values, but are they communicated? Is your vision as a managing director, as a board of directors, is it conveyed? Do the staff know what the vision is? To the standards. And then if they are, ensure that those standards are implemented. So ensure that systems actually are operated to achieve the standards. And then with regard to staff, very important, it's about effective motivation and supervising and training implementation. The problem is many organisations train, but once people have got a certificate, they think that's the end of the process. Well, it's not. It's the beginning of the process. So you need to ensure that once the staff are trained, they implement the knowledge they've learned. Otherwise, you're wasting your money training staff. And believe you me, if you don't ensure effective implementation, people will forget the knowledge that they've been given within a few days or a few weeks. So, ensure and have policies relating to reinforcement once people have been trained. Ensure that it's implemented, so think very much about how you can reinforce what people have been taught. And then you need to monitor and assess and compare. Provide consequences, that's both good and bad. So if somebody doesn't wash their hands, hello? Sorry, that's just a telephone call from Yasser. I thought, can everybody still hear me? Can you hear me? Sorry? Right. Okay, so, and you've got to adjust and continually improve your performance, and then you keep going in a cyclic way. The current strategies for you to consider within the food business, we've already mentioned some of these in the model. Providing adequate resources, commitment and support of the owners and direct. Lead by example. Wear the white coats. Wash your hands when you go into the premises. Do everything properly. Train competency, not certification. Trainers, let's carry out the training. Try and work with companies to make sure that subsequently people retain that knowledge and apply that knowledge within the business. Make sure you've got effective food safety management system. Maybe it has to for manufacturing. It may be something totally different than Codex has to featuring. Most catering businesses have the ability or the scientific information to enable them to effectively implement Codex HACCP. Manufacturing has, catering doesn't. But we need food safety management systems. Everything must be based on science. We must ensure that the temperatures that we use are based on science. What's the temperature for householding? Some countries in the UK it's 63, in America it's 57. Which one's right? Well, America's right. 57 is the one that's based on science, because the maximum temperature for the multiplication of a pathogen is 55 degrees centigrade. So, make sure, as I said, you're based on science. Working partnership, regulators, enforcement officers, trainers, customers, everybody working together for the same objective, providing safe food. Use sampling effectively, and it's manufacturing always being good with sampling. Keep your toes based and build positive food safety. And just a final quick talk about one of our proposed solutions, and I feel which is the manager in charge of the program. The manager charges the person directly responsible for the food safety related operations with direct authority, control and supervision of the food handler. Now, this works very well in catering and retailing. It's a challenge in manufacturing. Because in manufacturing, most manufacturing companies are set up with quality assurance staff who are very knowledgeable on the process and food safety and science and everything else, and that's great. It's a bit like maybe a hygiene manager that might be employed within a hotel who's degree qualified and so on. So they're very good, but neither the hygiene manager nor the quality assurance staff have direct responsibility on a day-to-day basis for the food handlers. So within most manufacturers, you need to make sure that you have a hygiene person actually employed within the production team, maybe responsible to the production manager for the staff. But that's just something to think about. So these are all the requirements. That's for the MIC, as I said, because of time, I won't go into all of these, but if anybody is interested, then you can certainly contact me. These are the requirements for the MIC. So, yep, we're there. Okay.
Is there anyone who have a question for this session? Or is it, okay. Okay.